I mean, you know what it feels like? Mike Shanahan's in Kyle Shanahan's ear. Honestly, that's what it feels like. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I think I look at the situation again. To me, when I look at the San Francisco's 49ers roster and what they have built, the guys they signed this offseason, getting Trent Williams, they're going to get Nick Bosa back there. Like, they have got such a solid window or such a solid roster that they're looking at this saying, hey, man, we got a 3 or 4 year window the way we've constructed our team with Kyle Shanahan, with John Lynch, with Mike Shanahan advising, that they're looking at it like, and I don't know who the quarterback is that they're looking at, but they're looking at it like, man, if we get this position solved, because Jimmy Garoppolo, let's face it, I always say, people say availability is the greatest availability is the greatest ability, excuse me. I always say responsibility to me is the greatest ability, but availability is a close second. And Jimmy Garoppolo just hasn't been available enough for them. So, if they can solve that issue and have somebody who can come in and play either after Jimmy Garoppolo is moved or when Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt, and they don't fall off the map with the guys they have had in Mullins or in Beathard, who is now gone, like, that makes sense to me. Like, you've got to have somebody that you trust in that backup position that you're grooming to take over long term.
Mark, when you, couple weeks before the draft, and you were sitting there in Washington and Denver, and all of a sudden they could draft your position, I always understood, like, when the draft, it's almost like freshmen into high school. You kind of size them up if you're a sophomore or a junior. In your history with the Broncos and the Washington football team, when all the rookies came into the first camp, could you identify very quickly, like Kyle Pitts would walk in and you'd go, okay, that dude can play. Do you remember a couple of players, as you were a veteran offensive lineman, that walked into camp and you knew instantly that guy could help us this year? That guy is that good.
Oh, you can, as a veteran player, you can pick a roster down to 3 or 4 guys before you ever step on the football field, or on your first day of practice, I should say. When you start seeing guys play, you start seeing guys move, you start seeing guys understanding. I'll never forget, late in my career, I was sitting in my locker. The Broncos had my shirt off, just a pair of, underpants on, big gut hanging over, big boiler hanging over my underpants. I mean, skinny legs, just out of shape, typical offensive lineman, right? And there was this giant muscle pig across the way that we had signed as a free agent. This dude was yoked up, looked like a bodybuilder. And so I can't help it. I'm staring at the guy, right? And he looks at me and goes, "What are you looking at?" And I say, "Hey, no offense, but in my experience, you just have way too many muscles to be any good at playing this game." And they cut him 2 days later. I mean, he was awful. He could bench a house, but he was not a good football player. And so those are the things you start to see, how guys, the fluidity of movement, guys that are football players, oftentimes in today's NFL, we're more concerned with drafting track athletes. Like, if we break out and start running 40s, I want track athletes. If we're playing a football game, I want football players. That's what I need to look for.
Yeah. The whole, it's funny. I had a friend yesterday said, your show is, he goes, it's so much football. And I said, well, the draft now is bigger for a lot of people than the NBA, hockey, and baseball regular seasons. Now, I know those sports have a lot of fans. I watched the Dodger game for 2 hours yesterday.
Right.
But the draft is funny. It has become, everybody trades around pieces. People are super aggressive. And then there are teams like Cincinnati that never makes trades. Belichick's made 82 draft day moves. When you were in the league, nobody made big trades, did they? Were you ever on a team that made a big trade?
No, teams didn't really. Like, when I was in Washington, because Joe Gibbs believed in trading unknown commodities for known commodities. So there wasn't very often under Joe Gibbs, my first 4 years, that we had a first-round draft choice. They always traded him away for a real player. And that's what Joe believed. I'd rather have a true veteran player that already knows the game that I can count on than a young guy that I don't know if he's going to be able to play in this level or not. So that was kind of a Washington Bobby Beathard, Joe Gibbs philosophy.
Yeah.
It changed, but yeah, we didn't have a lot of big time trades.
Yeah. So Joe Gibbs was one of the great coaches of all times. He kind of believes that's the Pete Carroll, Les Snead thing in the NFL, which is I'd rather have Jalen Ramsey than a cornerback I don't know can play. I mean, the reality is, yeah, I mean, I totally get it. By the way, what round you go in?
10th round, 163rd overall player, or 263rd player taken, I think. It's something ridiculous,
But your round doesn't even exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist any longer. Yeah, that's how. I mean, that they were itching to get me. Hey, man, I was like Chris Farley and Tommy.
Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card end of the first year automatically. Learn more at discover.com/yes. So, by the way, you know how we do mock drafts all the time? We do them live. I bring on a scout. I'm going to do a mock draft to close the show today, but it's a mock draft what I would do. A lot of these mock drafts are what I predict teams will do. In each case, I am the general manager. This is what I would do. This is who I want based on needs, based on who's available. I do have a trade in it because I think there's one team that needs to trade again. They've already traded once. I think they should trade again.
That's like your dream.
It is kind of my dream. My last segment of today is a dream. If I could draft, I just put it out there. Mark Schlereth, 3 Super Bowl rings. We get him on about once a week, is now joining us live from Denver. By the way, I just saw a story today about Denver made a run at Matt Stafford. Well, listen, Vic Fangio may not be there by Thanksgiving if he doesn't win, and Drew Lock is, you live in Denver. You talk about the Broncos every day. When will they make a decision? What if Drew Lock stinks in his first 5 games and goes 1-4? Will they make a trade at the deadline for like a Teddy Bridgewater, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they'll still, at the end of the day, they'll find a veteran quarterback, be it Teddy Bridgewater, be it Gardner Minshew. I think they'll make a trade at some point to bring in some veteran competition. And I also think that they're going to draft a quarterback, although I don't think they're going to take one at 9 overall. And I don't think they're moving up. I think if you read the tea leaves, Colin, and you look at their unwillingness to pay the price for Matthew Stafford, that should tell you right there that they don't want to get involved in that quarterback market at a price that's significant, right? Because I think George Payton, their new general manager, understands and realizes that this is going to be a process. This team has not been good for several years. So there's a process to building this roster to the point where the roster is competitive. And he is not going to, I guess, hamstring the franchise by trading away all those assets to go up and get a quarterback. So I don't believe that's going to happen. And like I said, if you're not in the Matthew Stafford sweepstakes to get that to go, then I just don't believe you're going to do it for a rookie quarterback that is completely unproven. And there's as much a chance at failure as there is success. Zach
Wilson's a quarterback who, quote, thrives in chaos. And I've said this before, if you're good at something, you'll lean into it. If you're a good singer, you'll sing in the shower, in the car, whatever you're good at, you'll lean into. I get it. If you're a hunk, you'll go to the gym. You'll wear a tight T-shirt. That's the way we all work, right? You're good, you lean in. Zach Wilson's great in chaos. And I think to myself, well, John Elway could be good in chaos, but that doesn't mean he wasn't great pre-snap to audible out of chaos. Mm-hmm. When you were with John Elway for a long time, was he mostly a pocket guy and ran when he had to? Because he was in his time, he was the best athletic quarterback by far in the league. How much of the chaos was self-induced? It was John ad-libbing, and how much was O-line broke down?
Right. Yeah, I think early in his career, there was a lot of breakdown, a lot of forced. And I think that John Elway, like most players, as years go on, you become more aware of your surroundings, what it takes to win, and then you're very judicious about the times you take off and put yourself in harm's way. Like, there's a difference between thriving in chaos and creating your own chaos.
Right.
And I think you've got to be very careful with that, because I want a guy who thrives in chaos but doesn't play chaotically. And that, there are guys who make big plays in chaos, but they're chaotic doing it. Those guys don't survive the long term. The guys, to me, whose default mechanism is from the neck up, the guy who makes a play, even in chaos, can manage the chaos, can slide around. The best scrambler in the world is a guy like Tom Brady, who never actually leaves the pocket, but just manipulates it, slides around in it, and still finds the play down the football field. So those are the guys that I truly want in chaotic situations. Here's what I know about problems. And this is any walk of life. Just forget football. Any walk of life. As soon as you solve one problem, there will be another to take its place. It's a biblical guarantee. That's going to happen. All right? So you have to be able to thrive in chaotic situations, but you can't be chaotic in doing it. And so there's a fine line there that you have to measure. But like I said, when a quarterback tends to have a default mechanism that goes, let me rely on my athleticism, that guy won't last the long term. When he says my default mechanism is from the neck up, that guy will play for a long time.
Mike Shanahan, Niners have given up a bunch of picks to get to the number 3 pick. It's just,